This is World Comics Review, and I screwed up. So I did a video about the first manga a few days ago, but I made a number of really embarrassing, glaring mistakes. So I thought about captioning in the corrections to the video, but better to just re-record the whole thing. Maybe I won't even mumble so much this time. So I'd like to begin this by reiterating my shout out to Comico Deano, on whose live stream I went maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago now. And it's a stream to show off the newest comics you bought, and I just happened to have bought this one. So this is what a lot of Western otaku consider to be the first manga. It's Treasure Island by Osamu Tezuka, and it came out in 1947. And yeah, a lot of Western otaku claim that this is the first manga, although they also say that manga was influenced by ukiyo-e, which came out in 1600. So apparently nothing happened between 1600 and 1947, and then the manga style just abruptly sprung up out of the ground overnight. And if you've read many other comics, you might recognise an influence from Tintin in the Land of the Soviets in this as well, especially with the dog. So yeah, it's a heavy influence from Tintin in the Land of the Soviets, and also Tezuka was good friends with Walt Disney too. And there's an ancestor of the prophetic sharks and Viz as well, I've just noticed. So anyway, a lot of Western otaku claim that this is the first ever manga, but they're talking nonsense, of course. Slightly more intelligent Western otaku know that actually about 6 months before this came out, this first appeared. So this is Sazai-san by Machiko Hasegawa. And Sazai-san is a Yonkoma, or 4-panel gag strip, which began in April 22nd, 1946. Not August, as I said in the previous video. So yeah, this is a long-running gag manga which began in 1946 and ended, I think, in 1972. And around 1966 it spawned a TV cartoon, which is the longest running cartoon series ever, which is still going today, beating The Simpsons by around 20 years. No, well, like 30 years actually. Yeah, no, 27 maybe. Simpsons started in 1990, I think. So yeah, many Western otaku that are slightly more intelligent reckon that this, Sazai-san by Machiko Hasegawa, was the actual first manga. So are they correct? Well, not a bit of it, as it turns out. I should put these on the other side. I also have this. This is an issue of Shoujo Karabu from Sangatsu, or March 1942. So not only is Sazai-san not the first manga, it's not even the first manga by Machiko Hasegawa. So Shoujo Karabu is, in keeping with the times, mostly a story paper. So regular, weekly or monthly with text stories with illustrations. But it also carried a few comic strips. Hopefully I can find it more quickly than in the previous video. So yes, fewer comic strips in Japan than in the USA at the time. I guess they were considered kind of a decadent and Western decadence or whatever, contributing to illiteracy. Where is it? So yeah, mostly text stories with block illustrations, but there is one comic strip. So yeah, 1942, and who do we find? Machiko Hasegawa, and you can see like a primitive form of her style. So this is a Nakayoshi Techie. I couldn't read this last time. Techao. Nakayoshi Techao. It's about schoolgirls doing something. So yeah, 4 pages, 22 panels of schoolgirls helping somebody out, but you can definitely see the prototypical Sazai-san style. And this little girl actually looks like Sazai-san's younger sister. Maybe this is yeah, we can retcon this, or headcanon this, into actually being Sazai-san's family. So this is Sazai-san when she's like 10 years old, and this is... No, that doesn't work, because her younger sister didn't age. So anyway, this was Machiko Hasegawa's work in 1942 when she was 20 years old. So could this be the first manga, an earlier Machiko Hasegawa work? Well, it turns out, no, that's nonsense as well. Let's now turn to this magazine, the Gei Jutsu Shin Cho. Let me bag up my antique comic first. Don't know if I can edit this bit out. Right, so this is the Gei Jutsu Shin Cho from September 2019, and about half of the magazine is entirely about Sazai-san. So this is normally about Western life drawing or painting or sculpture. Well, that is the best kind of art. Oh, and alcohol adverts. But yeah, lengthy article on Sazai-san, and this is Machiko Hasegawa. Actually looks kind of like Sazai-san, and this is the second edition, the prototype cover for the second edition of the first volume of the Sazai-san book. More on that later. Some of Machiko Hasegawa's art materials. This is her when she was older, and there she was originally formed a publishing company with her two sisters, so it is called The Sisters. So this is them, the Hasegawa sisters, publishing Sazai-san in the 1940s, 1950s. So yes, this began in 1946. And here's some reproductions of some of the strips on a different paper stock, like a thick newsprint. Some of the other books. So yeah, you can read it how it would have originally been on newsprint. Here's some of the original artwork, which has been cut up and had bits added later. So that's all explained further on along in the book. So let's get to the actual interesting material. So yeah, it's about Sazai-san, and here is the original artwork of the first Sazai-san. And here is its first appearance in a local newspaper in Kyushu called the Fukunichi Shimbun. So it first appeared on 22nd of April, not August, 1946 in this Kyushu newspaper. And you can see that there's only 2 characters here, but there's 3 in the original artwork. They've been pasted in later. So when Sazai-san was reprinted in books, the artwork was modified and more characters were added, so sections were redrawn and pasted onto the original artwork. Here's a timeline of Sazai-san, so starting in 1946, going along. Another picture of Machiko Hasegawa. Advertising, I think, Sazai-san advertising. That was kind of controversial for reasons. Some companies used Sazai-san without Machiko Hasegawa's permission, and she complained, and Sazai-san was so legendary that the Japanese copyright laws were completely altered to protect Sazai-san. And now Japan's got really tough copyright laws. This video is actually technically illegal, but don't tell anybody. Yeah, no, actually 1969 the Sazai-san cartoon started, and it's still running today. So yeah, beating The Simpsons by approximately 20 years. Oh, here, 1970, here, a bus company used Sazai-san without permission, and there was a gigantic court case. And 1989, the Sazai-san comic strip finished, but the TV cartoon continues today. Here we are. Here's the first edition of Sazai-san in book form. So the original edition was in this landscape format, although inside the strip is turned into like a square with incidental art around the side. And this is when the extra characters were pasted in to enlarge the artwork. Although actually panel 4 still has only 2 characters, but in the final version the third character, Sazai-san's brother, is also added as well. So yeah, the first edition of the book was in this landscape format, and it was kind of weird. It didn't fit on the standard bookshop shelves of the time, so I think about 20 or 30,000 copies, whatever the print one was, were all returned, and Machiko Hasegawa had them all packed inside her house for ages. So when the second volume came out, it was in the more standard format like this, but then it was really popular by then. and all the booksellers were saying, this is the second volume, where's the first volume? So it was reissued in the more standard format, and that's still in print today. Just the title block is this wood style, but now it's just typed. But yeah, this is you can still buy new copies of this right now. Yeah, carrying on. Here's some original pencils, more original artwork. This is Sazai-san's 10th anniversary. This Yorineki, Yorineki. I've forgotten how to read Japanese. Something Sazai-san. These big books. They're like the size of this Tezuka. Have Sazai-san reprints, and if you come to Japan and want to buy some Sazai-san, these are probably the ones to get. I don't think they're in print anymore, but some of the strips are in colour. Although if you want it as it appeared in the newspaper, then this one's the way to go. Here's the characters. Sazai-san's house, a model of it which is used as a reference by the makers of the cartoon. So here there was a live action TV series in 1952, and the actress playing Sazai-san looks less like Sazai-san than Machiko Hasegawa does. Here's the sisters a bit later, 1958, and these are like their daughters or granddaughters maybe, who are still three sisters, or three I guess cousins now, I suppose, because Machiko Hasegawa didn't have children. So three cousins who still run the business today and keep the books in print. Interviews with the cousins. And here is Machiko Hasegawa and Sazai-san's history. So I guess this is when she was really young. Maybe that's was she the youngest? I think she was the middle sister, so maybe that's her. Anyway, so she was working in 1942 when she was 20 years old. But actually she first got her comic strips published when she was 15 years old in 1935. So here's an article about her in an earlier version, an earlier issue of Shoujo Karabu. So yeah, when she was just 15, she was already a professional manga artist. And here's one of her works from 1934, which is, I guess, not published. Maybe she just drew it for herself when she would have been just 14 years old. And when she was 16, she was doing this one, which is a nice brushwork. It looks like original artwork too. It's in a notepad. I don't know if this was published or just one she did for herself. And here's another one of her earlier artworks in another issue of oh, this is not Shoujo Karabu. This is is that Neko? Is that cat? Can't read Japanese. Cat, maybe something something. So yeah, another one of her early. Oh no. Okay, it's Shoujo Karabu. Never mind. Right. Okay, another one of her early works in Shoujo Karabu. This is Nime. Oh, this is the title, right? Tameki no Men. Tameki no Men. Is this men as in noodles? Maybe. I don't know. Looks like a Samurai Times story. Anyway, here's another one of her early works. I can't even identify which one is hers in something else. Some more. Another one of her early works. Someone's cut it out and posted it in a scrapbook. So this is as it appeared in Shoujo Karabu or a newspaper or whatever. Here's another of her early works. Here's some Shoujo Karabus. This one is Ninensei or Sannensei. So those are like second grade and third grade. I don't know if these are aimed at junior high. I guess they're aimed at elementary school students. So Ninensei, Sannensei, second grade, third grade. Some work she got published in there too. And some more stuff about her early work. Her kid's written Baka on the wall. That's Japanese for stupid. This is Ijiwaru Ba-san. Ijiwaru Ba-san. That's like irritating grandmother. Epuran Oba-chan. And grandmother who wears an apron. I've got one of those too. I thought it was an earlier work by her, so I bought it sight unseen, and it's actually a much later work. It started in 1958, and this is 1963. This is kind of a more pessimistic one. Ijiwaru Ba-san. Yeah, being like irritating granny. She's like a Japanese version of Meddlesome Ratbag from Viz, if anyone knows who that is. some other work she's done, and yeah, this is a saying collector maybe. Yeah, and then the rest of the magazine is about other artists. Some classical European paintings, some something else. Coloured comic strips. So that's Gei Jutsu Shin Cho. So one thing it doesn't mention, or it doesn't mention with pictures anyway, is that when Machiko Hasegawa first started, when she was 15 years old, she began as an apprentice to the creator of this. This is a Nora Kuro, which roughly means the black dog. Which is actually like Kuro Inu, but whatever. It's nicknamed the black dog, and it's a slipcase. So this is from the early to mid 1930s, and these were reissued. A lot of 1930s manga were reissued in these hardcover slipcased editions in the 1970s, which are not exactly cheap anymore, but much easier to find. Pretty much any decent bookshop should have at least some Nora Kuro, and possibly some of the others, such as Tank Tankuro, which actually got an English release a while ago, but the English wasn't particularly good. And yeah, when you see it this way around, it looks like it says Governor. So yeah, I always call it the Governor. But anyway, this is mid to late 1930s, and you can't possibly argue that this is not a comic strip. So yes, even before Machiko Hasegawa was publishing comic strips, this was already coming out in book form. And yeah, you can't argue that this is not a comic, unless you're Chuck Rosansky of Mile High Comics, of course, because this isn't distributed through the US direct market by Diamond, so is, according to him, just a pseudo comic. So could this be one of the first manga? Well, not really. So even before, whoops, spoilers, even before Nora Kuro, let's turn now to our reference book. So Wikipedia says that an earlier form of manga were called kibyoshi, which apparently means yellow books, although that'd be a kiroi hon surely. And kibyoshi were evolved from something called akahon, which are like picture books for young children with a big picture and a little bit of writing, and kurohon, which were kind of illustrations and text telling the stories of kabuki or no plays. So this book, Manga, the Prehistory of Japanese Comics, I bought this in the gift shop of the Kyoto City Museum. You've probably heard of the Kyoto Manga Museum, but this is from the Kyoto City Museum, which is all of 3 minutes walk away from the Kyoto Manga Museum. And they had an exhibition of really early manga too, I guess. But this doesn't really mention kibyoshi. It's more concerned with the development of the artistic styles of manga. So here's some foreigners. These are from the end of the Edo period and the beginning of the Meiji Restoration, when Japan started opening up to the world after about 250 years of complete isolation. So yeah, kibyoshi were a bit like this. So pictures and text, kind of in panels. And the first kibyoshi started appearing around 1795, and evolved from the akahon for young children, but kibyoshi were more aimed at adults, like educated adults, and some of them were even serialized, so some stories in kibyoshi ran over 2 or 3 volumes, and yeah, they had yellow covers, so they were the yellow books, although I'm sure that'd be kiroihon or kirohon. There was akahon or red books, and kurohon or black books, and there was also aohon, which are blue books. All so the colour of the cover identified the genre. Yeah, the akahon even predated the kibyoshi. And this book contains examples of the various manga art styles of the time, like Toba-e is a kind of the name of the art style. Talked about what it was about. Zara-e, so humorous or comical paintings, but they're like humorous but also have serious subjects like the teachings of Buddha. And yeah, the manga artists of the time were like Hogarth in England. They were making fun of the the royal court and politicians, but they had to kind of do it in subtle ways because that could get you beheaded in Japan. And there's one example from oh, here we are, saved page. From these are from the 1850s, and yeah, these are not kibyoushi, these are something else. What are these? Oh, just as Japanese folktales. So yeah, Japanese folktales transformed into what you can't possibly argue are not comic strips. Well, unless your name's Chuck Rosansky, of course. And these are pseudo comics because Diamond didn't distribute them. So yeah, these are from the 1850s. So 1858. So 89 years before Tezuka's Treasure Island. So yes, as you can tell, dust cover. As you can tell, manga has a much longer history than beginning in 1947. I want to save that page again. Oh, whatever. Right, don't waste time in the video. And so yeah, kibyoushi go back to at least 1795, evolving from akahon, which were more like semi-educational picture books for young children, but I guess they could be sequential art too. So yeah, and also around the Far East at the same time, especially in China, there was something called Lian Huanhua, which Chinese nationalists complained manga was just a rip-off of, although Lian Huanhua apparently started to be used in the 1880s when China started to import lithograph printing from the West, but it's possible that they evolved out of earlier woodblock printed or just hand-drawn stories in the same style. And Lian Huanhua were kind of a landscape format kind of comics with a picture and vertically written text, and were apparently popular in China from at least the 1880s right up to the 1980s or 1970s. And I don't have any Chinese Lian Huanhua, but I have got a North Korean one. So North Korea and China were both communist, of course, and this is from 1959, so I presume was influenced by the Lian Huanhua. So as you can see, it's like a picture book for young children, just a text and one big picture on each page, and a landscape format like Lian Huanhua. But you can tell by the just the style of the art and the amount of text that this is clearly aimed at an older audience than young children, like teenagers or adults. And it's about a violent revolution because it's North Korean, of course. So yeah, this is a like Lian Huanhua, but not quite. So that was something else that was in the east of Asia at the time. Yeah, this one's from 1959. And Lian Huanhua, just as an interesting aside, also influenced Jack Chick, the extremely Christian comic artist who was serving in the Pacific in World War II, and then I guess spent some time in China during the post-World War II Chinese Civil War, when the communists and nationalists put aside their truce and started fighting each other again. And the communists used Lian Huanhua to spread their propaganda in a kind of simple, easy-to-read format. And yeah, Jack Chick was influenced by that, came back to America and started the Chick Tracts, which are also kind of landscape format comics, although they're more like comics, to spread Christian ideals. Often very extreme Christian ideals in the Chick comics. And also a very similar format, although I don't know if it was influenced by the Chinese comics exactly, was the Tijuana Bibles, which are both some of the first American comics and the first American-made porn comics. And they started appearing in the 1930s, possibly the 1920s, and ran up to the 1950s, and were kind of circulated in bars and sports clubs and places where men gathered. And so yeah, the history of comics is vastly more interconnected than a lot of people might think. So jumping back to this, so yeah, next time a Western otaku tells you that manga just kind of sprang out of the ground fully formed in 1947, well, they're talking nonsense, aren't they? And yeah, stop all that nonsense about The Lion King just being some cynical rip-off of Kimba the White Lion too. Well, they thought nobody had noticed because Japanese stuff's so obscure, of course. And especially stop blaming Walt Disney for that. for some reason people lay the blame for that at Walt Disney's feet, even though he died decades before they even started working on The Lion King. So what's that all about, eh?